I stared at the musty basement cot, trying to maintain my composure as Margaret, my mother-in-law, stood at the top of the stairs with that insufferable smile plastered across her face. "The sheets are clean enough," she said, wrinkling her nose. "Though I suppose you're used to less, being a public school teacher and all." My name is Elena Chen, and for the past 3 years I'd endured Margaret Winston's not-so-subtle digs about my profession, my background, and what she called my unfortunate lack of proper breeding. But this, relegating me to the basement while the rest of the family enjoyed the luxurious guest rooms upstairs, this was a new low. "Mom," my husband Thomas said weakly from behind her, "maybe we could." "Thomas, darling," she cut him off. "We've discussed this. The Carmichaels are coming tomorrow, and you know how particular they are. We can't have them knowing that their potential business partner's son married a—" "Well," she gestured vaguely in my direction. I bit back a laugh. If only she knew. The mansion we were staying in for Thanksgiving weekend, all 12,000 square feet of it, belonged to me, or more specifically, to the private investment firm I built from scratch over the last decade, the teaching job. That was my passion project, something I did because I loved it, not because I needed it. But Margaret didn't know that. Neither did Thomas. When I met Thomas 3 years ago, I was already worth north of $50 million. But I kept that quiet. I'd seen too many relationships destroyed by money, watched too many people change when they realized what I had. So I lived simply, drove a modest car, and let everyone assume the obvious about a 29-year-old high school math teacher. Thomas had been different, or so I thought. He defended me against his family's elitism, insisted that money didn't matter, at least until recently. "The bathroom's down the hall," Margaret continued, pointing to a door that looked like it hadn't been opened since the Reagan administration. "Do try not to wander upstairs during the night. The floors creak something awful, and we wouldn't want to disturb anyone important." I nodded politely, setting my overnight bag on the cot. "Thank you for your hospitality, Margaret." She preened at my submission, probably mistaking it for the desperation of a social climber trying to fit in. Thomas shuffled his feet, looking everywhere but at me. "Well then," Margaret said, already turning to leave. "Thomas, darling, come help me with the seating arrangements for tomorrow. We need to make sure Elena is appropriately placed." As they disappeared upstairs, I pulled out my phone and sent a quick text to my assistant, Maya. "Everything ready for tomorrow?" Her response came immediately, "All set. Transfer papers prepared, staff briefed. Should I warn the current housekeepers they'll be unemployed by breakfast?" I smiled, typing back, "No need." Margaret gave them the day off. Didn't want them disturbing the ambience during her perfect Thanksgiving. I could almost hear Maya's laugh through her reply. "Their loss. Our team is ready to take over at 7 a.m. sharp. Want me to order champagne for the big reveal?" "Better make it the 82 Krug," I wrote. Margaret considers anything else pedestrian. I put my phone away and sat on the cot, wincing at the springs digging into my thighs. Upstairs, I could hear Margaret's voice carrying through the vents, orchestrating her perfect Thanksgiving dinner, completely unaware that she was about to lose her perfect holiday mansion. The property had come up for sale 3 months ago. The Winston family had been renting it for their social gatherings for years, using it to impress potential business partners and maintain their illusion of old money success. But the truth was, they were hemorrhaging cash. Thomas's father's company was on the verge of collapse, and this mansion was far beyond their means. So when my investment firm had the opportunity to buy it, I couldn't resist. I kept my name off the paperwork, using one of my shell companies instead. Let them have one last holiday here, I thought. One last chance to show their true colors. A floorboard creaked above me, followed by Thomas's voice. "Mom, maybe we should at least bring her dinner." "Don't be ridiculous," Margaret snapped. "She can eat in the kitchen with the help tomorrow." "Really, Thomas, I don't know what's gotten into you lately. First that embarrassing teaching job of hers, and now you're suggesting we treat her like an equal." "I just think." "No, you don't think. That's always been your problem. Thank goodness you have me to manage these things. Now, about the Carmichaels. They're our last chance to save the company, and I won't have your little experiment in charitable dating ruin this for us." I listened as their voices faded, feeling a familiar ache in my chest. I'd really thought Thomas was different. Even after learning about his family's financial troubles, I considered helping them. But the past few months had shown me who he really was, a man too weak to stand up to his mother, too concerned with appearances to defend his own wife. Well, tomorrow would change everything. I pulled out my laptop, checking the final details for the morning. The new staff would arrive at 7 a.m. sharp, bearing their uniforms with my company's logo. The property transfer papers would be delivered during breakfast, right when Margaret was usually at her most imperious, and the movers I'd hired would show up at 9 a.m., ready to clear out the Winston family's belongings. Was it petty? Perhaps. But after 3 years of condescension, after watching Thomas slowly transform from the man I loved into a pale imitation of his mother's values, I was done playing nice. A text from Maya lit up my phone. "Car's ready for tomorrow. Driver will be there at 6:30 a.m. to take you to get changed. Sure you don't want to sleep somewhere else tonight?" I looked around the basement at the water stains on the ceiling and the mysterious stains on the carpet. "No," I typed back. "I want to remember every detail of this. It'll make tomorrow that much sweeter." As I settled onto the lumpy cot, I could hear Margaret's voice drifting down again, planning tomorrow's festivities in excruciating detail. She had no idea that her perfect Thanksgiving was about to become anything but. I smiled in the darkness, setting my alarm for 6 a.m. In just a few hours, everyone in this house would learn exactly who Elena Chen really was. The basement was silent except for the gentle hum of my alarm at 6 a.m. I woke instantly, years of early morning meetings having trained my body to snap to attention. Upstairs, the house was still quiet. The Winstons weren't early risers, especially not Margaret, who considered anything before 9 a.m. uncivilized. Perfect. I changed quickly into the clothes I'd carefully hidden at the bottom of my overnight bag, a tailored Channel suit in charcoal gray, Louboutin heels, and my grandmother's jade pendant. The transformation from humble teacher to CEO was subtle but unmistakable. The town car was waiting at the end of the long driveway when I slipped out, Maya standing by the door with a coffee in hand. "You look like hell," she said, handing me the cup. "Was the basement that bad?" "Worse," I replied, sliding into the back seat. "But it'll be worth it. Everyone here?" She nodded, checking her tablet. "Security team's in position. New household staff is waiting for my signal, and the property transfer papers are ready for delivery at 8:30 a.m. sharp." We drove to my office, where I showered and finished preparing for the day ahead. By 7:45 a.m., we were heading back to the mansion. Through the car window, I could see the first signs of activity. Margaret's imported Italian coffee maker would be working overtime by now, and the kitchen would be buzzing with last-minute Thanksgiving preparations. "Ready?" Maya asked as we pulled up to the front door. I touched my grandmother's pendant for luck. "Let's do this." The new security team, wearing uniforms with my company's logo, opened the door for us. Inside, I could hear Margaret's voice rising in confusion and anger from the kitchen. "What do you mean you work for Chen Industries? I didn't hire you. Where are my regular staff?" I rounded the corner just as one of the new housekeepers was calmly explaining that Chen Industries had taken ownership of the property and all previous staff contracts had been terminated. Margaret's face, already flushed with anger, went pale when she saw me. Gone was the meek daughter-in-law in sensible teaching clothes. In her place stood someone she'd never truly seen before. "What is the meaning of this?" she demanded, though her voice quivered slightly. "Good morning, Margaret," I said pleasantly. "Sleep well." "Elena." Thomas appeared in the doorway, staring at me like he'd never seen me before. "What's going on? Why are you dressed like that?" "Like what, Thomas? Like someone who belongs upstairs instead of in the basement?" Margaret's eyes narrowed. "If this is some kind of joke." "Oh, it's not a joke," I assured her, accepting another coffee from one of my staff. "Chen Industries, my company, purchased this property 3 months ago. We've been very patient, letting you finish out your rental agreement. But as of 7 a.m. this morning, we've taken possession." The silence that followed was deafening. Thomas kept looking between me and his mother, his mouth opening and closing like a fish out of water. Margaret gripped the kitchen counter, her knuckles white. "That's impossible," she finally managed. "You're a teacher." "I am a teacher," I agreed. "I'm also the CEO of one of the largest private investment firms on the East Coast." "The teaching job?" "That's because I love it. Unlike some people, I don't measure success solely by my bank account." Maya chose that moment to walk in, carrying the property transfer documents. The movers will be here at 9 a.m., she announced, barely concealing her glee. Should I have them start with the basement, or would you prefer they begin with Mrs. Winston's rooms? Margaret's face turned an interesting shade of purple. You can't do this. We have guests coming. The Carmichaels. Ah yes, the Carmichaels, I interrupted. Your last hope for saving Winston Industries. Funny thing about that, they're actually one of my clients. Have been for years. In fact, they're the ones who told me this property was coming up for sale. Thomas finally found his voice. Elena, why didn't you tell me? I turned to him, feeling the weight of 3 years of silent compliance lift from my shoulders. Tell you what, Thomas, that your wife, the one you let your mother banish to the basement, could have bought and sold your family's company 10 times over? Would it have made a difference? He flinched and I knew the answer. It wouldn't have changed anything except how they treated me. They would have hidden their true nature better, played nice for the sake of access to my money, just like they were doing with the Carmichaels. The movers will be here soon, I continued, checking my watch. I suggest you start packing. The new owners, meaning me, would like to renovate before the holidays. But where are we supposed to go? Margaret sputtered. What about Thanksgiving? I smiled, remembering all the times she'd made similar dismissive comments about my humble background. I'm sure you'll figure something out. After all, isn't that what you told me last night? About knowing my place? The doorbell rang, right on schedule. Maya went to answer it, returning with a distinguished-looking couple in their 60s. Mr. and Mrs. Carmichael, I greeted them warmly. Thank you for coming early. Margaret's eyes widened in horror as the Carmichaels embraced me like an old friend. Elena dear, Mrs. Carmichael said, we wouldn't miss this for the world. Though I must say, when you told us about your little experiment with teaching, we thought you were mad. Sometimes the best way to understand people is to let them show you who they really are, I replied, watching as Margaret sank into a kitchen chair, her perfect Thanksgiving crumbling around her. The morning was about to get much more interesting. The next hour unfolded like a carefully orchestrated symphony. The movers arrived precisely at 9 a.m., their trucks lining the circular driveway. Margaret watched in horror as they began methodically packing up her precious antiques and family heirlooms, most of which, I knew, were actually rented for these occasions. You can't just throw us out, Thomas protested weakly. This is our holiday home. No, I corrected him, it was your rental property, one that you consistently use to humiliate and degrade others, including your wife. The Carmichaels observed this exchange with barely concealed amusement. They'd known me for years as a shrewd businesswoman, and now they were witnessing firsthand why I asked them to play along with my teacher facade. I must say, Mr. Carmichael commented, accepting a mimosa from one of my staff. This is far more entertaining than another stuffy Winston Thanksgiving. Margaret looked like she swallowed a lemon. James, surely you understand, our business arrangement will not be happening, he finished firmly. We've already signed with Chen Industries. Elena's proposal was, frankly, brilliant, unlike your son's rather desperate attempt to save your failing company. Thomas paled. You knew? About the company? I knew everything, I said quietly. About the debts, the failed ventures, your father's gambling problems. I could have helped, Thomas, if you'd been honest with me, if you treated me as a partner instead of someone to be ashamed of. Then why didn't you? He demanded. Because you needed to show me who you really were. And you did. Every time you stayed silent while your mother insulted me. Every time you chose appearance over substance. Last night in the basement, that was just the final confirmation. Maya appeared at my elbow. The master suite is cleared. Would you like to show the Carmichaels the renovations you're planning? I nodded, but Margaret wasn't finished. This is ridiculous. Thomas, are you going to let her treat your family this way? Thomas looked between his mother and me, and for a moment, I saw a flicker of the man I thought I married. But then it vanished, replaced by the same weak-willed compliance I'd grown to despise. You're right, Mother, he said. Elena, you need to stop this, whatever point you're trying to make. I held up my hand. The only point I'm making is that actions have consequences. You chose your mother's approval over your wife's dignity. Now you can have it permanently. I pulled an envelope from my bag and handed it to him. Divorce papers. My lawyer drew them up last week. Don't worry, I'm not asking for anything. You can keep whatever's left of your family's reputation. The sound of furniture being moved upstairs punctuated the silence that followed. Margaret had sunk into a chair, her perfect makeup streaked with tears. Thomas stared at the envelope like it might bite him. "You could have told me," he whispered. "Would it have changed anything?" I asked. "Would you have stood up to her? Defended me? Or would you have just hidden your contempt better, played nice to access my money?" His silence was answer enough. Mrs. Carmichael touched my arm gently. "Shall we look at those renovation plans, dear? I have some wonderful ideas for the solarium." As we climbed the stairs, the same stairs Margaret had forbidden me to use last night, I heard Thomas's defeated voice. "Where are we supposed to go?" I paused, looking back at the family that had nearly broken my spirit. "I hear the basement's available." The renovations took 3 months. I kept the mansion's historic charm, but modernized the spaces that needed it. The basement was converted into a state-of-the-art classroom where I now teach weekend mathematics programs for underprivileged students. The same students Margaret would have sneered at now fill these halls with laughter and learning. Thomas signed the divorce papers without contest. Last I heard, he and Margaret had moved in with a distant cousin in Connecticut. Winston Industries filed for bankruptcy shortly after the Carmichaels publicly announced their partnership with Chen Industries. Sometimes, during quiet moments in this house, I think about that night in the basement, about the woman who silently accepted their judgment, who let them believe she was less than she was. She's gone now, replaced by someone who never again has to pretend to be small for others' comfort. Maya says I should have exposed them sooner, but I disagree. Some lessons are worth waiting for. Some revelations need the perfect timing. And some basements make excellent classrooms, once you clear out the cobwebs and let in the light.